Your musicians and choir feed my spirit every Sunday. They fill my spirit. They usher me into the presence of God, and I thank them for the gifts of their talents, their time, and their willingness to serve. You inspire me by being here today. I know we have many people who are traveling. Perhaps they're already at their spring break destination. They're in foreign countries like Tennessee and South Carolina and Georgia and Florida. If they don't have the proper credentials and identification and passports, they may not get home, but I trust they will. And I hope they have a good time and safe travels. I'm glad that they can go, but thank you for being here today. Normally it would have been a pleasant walk on a beautiful spring night. And what better time or place to go than the Garden of Gethsemane? The moon would be out and bright and full and guide all of their steps as they walked down the Kidron Valley and then up into the Mount of Olives. What John called Gethsemane, the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, called a garden. John gave it the name, they gave it the title, and that's why we call it the Garden of Gethsemane. But the temperature must have been mild. It was a spring night like, well, not last night, that's for sure. Maybe, just maybe, soon we'll be finished with these freezing temperatures. Driving over again today, it was absolutely gorgeous with the sun coming up, frost on the fields again this morning, but I braved it and came anyway. But on that particular night that they walked to the Garden of Gethsemane, I would imagine it was a warm, as I said, very pleasant night with that full moon guiding their steps. And oh my, the disciples and Jesus needed to stretch. They had been in the upper room somewhere in Jerusalem for several hours, like many other pilgrims, and probably 250,000 pilgrims descended upon Jerusalem during Passover. They wanted to observe Passover there in Jerusalem. And like many others, they gathered in what we call the upper room, and they ate the Passover meal, and then Jesus continued to talk and teach and pray, and they had been there for hours. They needed to stretch and they needed to walk. So what better place to go than the Garden of Gethsemane, not very far away. And there they could even walk around in the garden. It would be peaceful. I doubt anybody else will be there. Doubt anybody would come. We'll have it to ourselves. It's just going to cap off a great evening. Normally, that's what would have happened. There was absolutely nothing normal about this night. Danger was in the air, and Jesus sensed it, and by this time, so did the disciples. Why was there danger in the air? Jesus, this man who came to do so much good, who did so much good, who taught as nobody else had taught, who touched people that others would not even touch, who gave attention to people who had been ignored for years. This man who had healed people, full of empathy, compassion, mercy, grace, goodness in every sense of the word. Danger in the air. For the last 3 weeks, as we've been walking through the season of Lent, preparing for Holy Week, which is soon to come, Lent, this time of reflection and renewal, thinking about the last days and hours of Jesus' life. I have tried to help you understand why so many people were angry with Jesus. And they were, both secular and religious leaders. It is because he assumed the role of a prophet. Now, he had done this his entire ministry, but it intensified as he got closer and closer to Jerusalem. He spoke truth to power, as I have told you. He exposed the hypocrisy the insincerity, the self-indulgence, the corruption, not just of the secular leaders, not just the Romans, but also the religious authorities. Not all of them, but those evidently in the highest positions of power. And he criticized especially the scribes and Pharisees. He criticized them because they valued ritual purity, making sure we get everything right about worship and sacrifice. They valued ritual purity over relationships and righteousness. And he said, you've got the cart before the horse. Jesus came to reveal the true nature of God, the heart of God. He came to give voice to God's dreams for all humans. And the more he spoke, the angrier they became. You recall this is a part of Holy Week, this particular passage, John 18. What did Jesus do when he walked into Jerusalem after Palm Sunday? He went directly to the temple, and what happened? He overturned the tables of the money changers. He ran those who were selling animals for sacrifices at exorbitant prices out of the temple. It was not what they were doing, it was how they were doing it. So uncaring, so insensitive, so corrupt. And he drove them out. And all week long, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, he interacted with the religious authorities, and those encounters did not go well. But he told one parable after another. Go to Luke's gospel, one parable after another, revealing their hearts and behavior. By Thursday, they had decided, we've had enough of him. His voice has got to be silenced, and he's got to disappear. He's got to move off the scene. And they found somebody willing to help them by the name of Judas. Judas was maybe the most trusted of the disciples. That's why he was the treasurer. You better trust the people who have your money. And you do, I'm sure. He handled all their money. He was the last one I think the disciples thought would ever do this. Jesus and the disciples, without Judas, you know, have now gone to the Garden of Gethsemane, this peaceful place where they'll not be disturbed. And all of a sudden, they hear footsteps getting louder and louder. And they look up, and what do they see? John said a detachment that's between 200 and 600 soldiers, Roman soldiers, temple police, scribes and Pharisees. Here they come en masse. They are carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Why weapons? Well, surely Jesus and the disciples are going to offer resistance. Why torches and lanterns? Well, they're going to run and hide when they hear us coming. And we're going to have to search for them. Even with a full moon, we're going to have to search behind rocks and up in trees. So here they come with their torches and lanterns. Do you see the irony? These people have come with their puny artificial lights to arrest the light of the world. They think their light is needed in this world more than the light of the world. John 8:12. I am the light of the world, Jesus said. I can light up a dark world if you give me a chance. arrive. By the way, it's night. Not ever supposed to do this at night. Why'd they do it at night? Because Jesus was pretty popular with the common folk, and if they'd have tried this in the daytime, they would have been interrupted. And the people would have rallied around Jesus for the most part and said, "You're not arresting this good man." All those people are now in bed, and here they come. And they're not going to be stopped by anybody. So they get to the garden. They get to where Jesus is. They're ready to go in there, and they're ready to hunt and search for Jesus. And all of a sudden, they see a lone figure walking toward them to the entrance of the garden. And this person standing in front of them says, "Who is it you are looking for?" Reminiscent of what he said to Andrew and the other disciple when those two were following John the Baptist, and John the Baptist said, "There is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." And they started following Jesus, and Jesus turned around and said, "What do you want? Who are you looking for?" Mary, at the empty tomb, was crying her eyes out, thinking it was the gardener. And what did he say to her? "Who is it you are seeking?" John likes that question. Who is it you want? And they said, "We've come after Jesus, the Nazarene." And he said, "I am he." Really, he just said, "I am." If you're an Old Testament scholar, you know where that originated. Moses at the burning bush, Exodus 3:14. God has come to Moses and said, "I want you to lead my people out of bondage from Pharaoh in Egypt." And Moses said, "Who are you? What is your name?" And what did God say? "I am. I will be whatever I must be to save, redeem, and take care of my people. I will do whatever I must do to save, redeem, and take care of my people. I am the past, the present, and the future. I am." And what did Jesus say? "Who is it you are seeking?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth." And he said, "I am." And how did they respond? There is so much humor right here, because they go bowling. It's as if somebody took a ball and rolled it right in front of them, knocked the first one down, and like dominoes, they all fell. They just fell backwards, which is the proper posture for being in the presence of the deity. And they fall down. They were prepared for everything, weren't they? They were prepared with their torches and their lanterns and their weapons. They were prepared for everything except the honesty and the courage of Jesus. They weren't prepared for that. He probably helped them up. You can just see them scrambling to get up, and they stand there, and he asks them again, "Who is it you are seeking?" "Jesus of Nazareth, I am he." And then Jesus said something rather unusual. "Let these men go." These 11 disciples. Well, why didn't he say, "Let these disciples of mine go"? He had just prayed in John 17 in the upper room, "Father, protect my disciples from evil." And now he is going to do it. He didn't call them disciples, he called them men. Just let these men go. I would imagine they started to apprehend Jesus and walk away with him, and that's when Simon Peter, much like many of your relatives, not anybody here, but your relatives, he was rather impulsive, thought before he talked, and did things he later regretted. He reaches into his robe and pulls out a sword, which he is not supposed to have. Nobody is supposed to have a weapon. They feared insurrection, and they feared people with weapons, and 250,000 people. You can do some damage. Be arrested if you have a weapon. Well, he's got a sword. He pulls it out. He swings it. And John's the one that gives us this detail. He cut off the ear of the high priest's servant, and that servant's name was Malchus. Folk, he was not aiming for his ear, but his head. And I would imagine there's some swerving going on, and all of a sudden, there goes the ear. So what did Jesus do? Luke is the one that tells us he bent down, picked up the ear, healed the high priest's servant, then looked at Simon Peter and rebuked him and said, "We'll have none of this." This is not how you respond to evil. With evil. I just can't imagine the drama that existed in this particular part of this story. And how tense it must have been when there's an ear lying on the ground. I am confident Jesus healed Malchus because of his concern for Malchus, but also it was another way to protect his disciples and distract the authorities so they wouldn't arrest Simon Peter and the others. Simon Peter, put your sword away, we'll not have this. Has anybody ever witnessed such grace under pressure? It's been about 25 or 30 years ago. First Baptist Church of Somerset, when I was the pastor there, I invited Timothy George to come and lead a January Bible study. Dean at the Beeson Divinity School in Sanford, down in Birmingham. And evidently this was a part of his study. And he made a comment that I wrote down, and it has changed my life. I've never forgotten it, obviously. It resonated with me. Because he said that night in that study, the last miracle Jesus performed was healing a wound caused by one of his own disciples. What is so astonishing is not that Jesus healed the wound of an enemy or healed the wound of an enemy while he was being arrested and under great stress, but that he healed the wound. He healed a wound caused by one of his own disciples. You know what this says to me? It tells me people who follow Jesus are just as capable of hurting others as those who do not call him Lord. Peter was as close to Jesus as anyone could be. He was in the audience the day Jesus talked about loving your enemies and praying for those who hurt you. I am confident the two of them had a lot of campfire talks about the transformational power of the ethic of love. And yet, when the authorities came for Jesus, Peter pulled his sword and he started swinging. I wish I could say that Peter's behavior is uncommon, but I don't think it is. Believers are as capable of hurting others as those who do not believe in Jesus. And their wrath can be directed toward strangers or dear friends or even family members. So how do believers hurt others? I think there's a variety of ways. Sometimes we hurt others with our words. We embarrass, we humiliate, we insult, we demean, we demoralize others by saying things that are harmful or false. We hurt others by ignoring them, acting as if they don't exist, or at least they just don't matter. We hurt people by manipulating or controlling them for selfish reasons. And then we hurt people through acts of violence as Peter did that dreadful night when he attacked Malchus. And sadly, the place where much of this violence occurs is in the home. This includes physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and other abusive behavior. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence hotlines receive approximately 21,000 calls a day, which averages out to 15 calls per minute or 2 during the time I will preach this sermon. I wonder how many people in this sanctuary today have made one of those calls or wanted to. Why does a person resort to violence? Several reasons have been identified. Violence is due to the unwillingness of someone to control his temper or to deal with frustration and anger in healthy ways. Violence is used to intimidate others and beat them into submission. Violence is an unhappy person's way of making others miserable. And tragically, violence is a common behavior among adults who were abused as children. Rick, I've been told by family counselors that up to 80% of adults abused as children become abusers. It is a self-perpetuating, vicious cycle. Is this true of you? Are you caught in that cycle of pain? How do you think Jesus feels about anyone who hurts another person? Well, how did he respond to Peter that night? He swiftly rebuked him, and then he reversed the damage Peter had done. That tells me two things. Jesus can heal the wounds of those who have been hurt by others. Perhaps this is the message you need to hear today if you are a victim of verbal or physical abuse. Even though your pain is deep or chronic and it is severe, there is hope. Jesus understands and can heal you and help you to move forward. He can also lead you to others who will help you on this journey toward hope and healing. And I encourage you to let Jesus and others begin this process in your life. On the other hand, if you have a habit of hurting people, he can help you to change. He can heal the pain inside you which causes you to lash out. He will guide you as you own up to your own mistakes and as you seek help to change your hurtful ways. Because I want you to know Jesus cares as much for you, the abuser, as he does the victim. Comic strip a few years ago. I think it's still out, for better or for worse. Michael pushes his little sister Lizzie out of his bedroom. He's so upset with her, and he pushes her out of the bedroom and slams the door on her hand and breaks her finger. The entire family goes to the emergency room where Lizzie gets her broken finger bandaged. Walking out of the hospital, Michael tells Lizzie, "I'm sorry. Lizzie, I'm sorry for what I did." And she says, "It's okay, Michael. My finger won't hurt forever." And Michael replies by saying, "But my memory will." Jesus can heal bad memories. and help you change the behavior which causes them if you will let him. He will lead you to people who understand and can help you too. I hope you will do that this week. And I have a feeling I'm not alone. The last miracle Jesus performed healed a wound caused by one of his own disciples. I pray, don't let Jesus' next healing miracle be necessary because of something you do this week. Would you bow with me in prayer? Lead and guide, whether we're a victim or an abuser. Help us today, for we pray in the name of Christ.